There we go. Well, it's good morning or good afternoon, everybody. It is 5:35 in the morning here in Dallas, Texas, but I'm very honored to be with all of you. I want to give two thanks, especially first to Amnon Adasaf, not only for inviting me to present, even via Zoom, but for giving me my doctor title early. Hopefully, I'm going to be having my Verteidigung, my defense, in the next couple months. But if you have any questions about my dissertation, you can ask Dr. Mark Kligman, who has read the whole thing. So he's there, yes? I saw him on the program. And without further ado, I know I am between a security briefing and lunch, so I have to be very, very entertaining. So without further ado, let's dive in. So, colleagues, it is my privilege today to speak to you about the nobility and the purity of the German and West Ashkenazic traditions. And my message for you about them today is they're not as pure as they sound. Our countries and communities both like to tell coherent stories of noble traditions passed on unchanging since time immemorial. But the classic Jewish story, as you know, is not one of only preservation, but also of transformation. The story of Ashkenazic Jewry, beginning as it did near all of you right now in the Schulstätte, has always been a function of many minhagim, many customs, which have formed and recombined and reformed over time. In fact, as we will study today and has been the subject of my dissertation work at Halle-Wittenberg University, some of the very norms of cantorial professionalism that we take for granted today all over the place were actually developed in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and were absorbed via migration and cultural intermixing throughout German communities in Western Europe. We consider German today is likely also an admixture of Polish, German, and even Bohemian cultural practices set off by the migrations and cultural reactions of different eras. So I'm going to say we're going to talk about two different things today. One, the conditions in Poland, Lithuania in the early modern period that created a new sort of cantor that you might find slightly familiar, and the migration, or as I say here, invasion of the German pulpits by 17th century Polish cantors and the different reactions they caused in a number of Western Ashkenazic pulpits and cities. So let's go. We ready? Let's go to Poland. Yeah. Formed by a marriage between the King of Lithuania and the Queen of Poland in 1569, I can remember it like it was yesterday. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth comprised a mighty kingdom with huge tracts of land, and its Jews thrived, growing into the largest community of Jews in the entire world. The Jews of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth boasted intricate intercommunal structures, economic vitality, and also musical complexity. In Western Poland, we see in Lvov and other cities, we see the first klezmers, and by klezmers, I mean formal guilds of Jewish musicians. That's where the term comes from, like we had also in Prague. But what is most special about Poland is the huge outbreak of musicality among its cantors. This, in my estimation, is due to two major factors. At the beginning of the 16th century, rabbis were directly backed by the king himself in Poland, Lithuania, so if they were the ones who had control. But over the 16th century, this changes dramatically. The local Jewish councils, the kihilot, the shtadlanim, were able to negotiate directly with the local nobility rather than with the king. This gave, for the first time, at least in that part of the territory, it gave the kahal the upper hand. And also, the kahal was able to domesticate the rabbi via a nefarious tool. Yes, I mean the contract. Now, with rabbis finally on the payroll and no longer the sole middleman of the Polish nobility and monarchy, the authority of the rabbinate begins to become more symbolic and less political and actual. And with this waning of rabbinic authority, the communities got to choose the cantors that they really wanted. And many times these were the musical ones, and not always the ones that the rabbis themselves wanted. As we can see from Rabbi Shlomo Luria in the early part of the 16th century says, the law requires that the rabbi should choose the cantor from among his students. But should the rabbi dare to exercise this right, his recommendation would be rejected by the congregation. It would be futile for the rabbi to protest. The communities retain for themselves and withhold from the rabbi the power of appointment in order that the cantor should remain accountable to them alone and free from the control of the rabbi. As a consequence, the piety of the reader is subordinate to a pleasant voice and to clear diction. So this is a problem by the turn of the 16th century, and by just 30 years later, it's considered a multi-generational issue that another Rabbi Barachia Berach laments has no end in sight. Now, one of the major projects pursued by the Polish-Lithuanian rabbinate in the Council of the Four Lands was the printing of a standardized Siddur in the early 17th century. This move to print, to standardize our liturgy, had perhaps an anticipated consequence of revitalizing the musical pursuits of the prayer leaders themselves. As Nissen Schulman remarked, quote, the free expression of the paitan, the religious poet, became limited and was finally eliminated. The cantor therefore strove to find other avenues through which he could express his inner feelings and in which he could excel. And so he began to emphasize the vocal art by which existing and standardized prayers could be sung, the cantorial art. The basic change was from an emphasis on poetic creation to an emphasis on musical creation. End quote. This is huge. With standardized liturgy, you no longer have a need for prayer leaders to have the same literacy as someone who writes their own PUT. And forgive me for those of you who were in Berlin, I've heard various parts of this lecture, but there's lots of new stuff here too. You don't have to memorize the liturgy anymore to be a Chazan. You have it all in front of you in the printed text. This allows way more people, including people with less religious literacy, to do the job of the cantor, i.e., it de-rabbinizes the role of the cantor. Moreover, the only artistic outlet left in the synagogue has now been squarely put in the musical realm. With the liturgy fixed and immutable, it is now only in music where the spirit of the Jewish human being can exert its natural creativity. So in Poland, you get a gigantic outbreak of musical artistry. You have loud cantors with wild gestures singing long melismas and creating a striking corpus of angry rabbinic writings, condemning these ignorant cantors and their artistic exploits. This is for you, Amnon. Let me give you an example of one of these perhaps more subversive cantors. This is the cantor, was the cantor of Rabbi Yoel Sirkis, known as the Bayit Chadash, a Talmud Shulchan Aruch commentator, who lived in Mizbesh in what is now Ukraine, then the Poland-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And he had a protracted fight with his cantor. This cantor claimed the Talmud study was now unnecessary because the Shulchan Aruch, Yosef Karo's comprehensive code of Jewish law, was authoritative and complete. Sirkis vehemently disagreed, and their disputes over the issue were heated and protracted to the point that Rav Sirkis got so angry he accidentally excommunicated the guy and got taken to court by the cantor and lost. This cantor, by the way, also, Rabbi Sirkis reports, was reported to have been drinking in bars during the 9 days before Tisha B'Av, and his excuse was both tragic and hilarious. He is reported to have said, למה זה אני להתאבל בית המקדש? אבל אני לא חרבתי. Why do I need to mourn the temple? I didn't destroy it. לא החרבתי. I didn't destroy it. This rebellious cantor that the Bayit Chadash describes reveals a strata of non-rabbinic personalities that were at the helm of major synagogue pulpits. These are not ignorant people. They are often quite learned. Sirkis's cantorial antagonist is able to successfully take him to rabbinic courts and win. These non-rabbinic cultural figures comprise what Elchanan Reiner describes as the secondary intelligentsia, a strata of non-rabbi literate professionals who came to redefine Jewish culture in the early modern period by pushing boundaries and expanding fields of inquiry that Jews are open to learning. Now, what exactly are these Polish cantors doing? One of the things was singing something that you might be familiar with, nonsense syllables. Lewandowski doesn't have as many of them, but you've heard them in Nigunim before, like da 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 and ra ra ra, although I haven't heard a lot of da da da's recently. This story in anonymous Tokacham Gula, which actually comes from Germany. In every matter of sanctity, he sings with a treacherous tongue and a stammering speech, this rabbi says of Polish cantors. Woe, da 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 la la ra ra. Woe to those haomrim la ra tov, those who call evil good and do many things like this, and interrupt the words and matters until one is no longer close to another because of these strange voices which alter one's kavanah, even in things required by Jewish law like Kaddish Kedusha and Baruch. So we have the incursion of all this musicality coming, this Polish musicality and musical expression from this setting, which is making a mess of the liturgy, at least in subrabbinic eyes. And we should remember that this aesthetic has picked up steam at the turn of the 18th century, right when the Baal Shem Tov is having his bar mitzvah. Mysticism drives melodic choices throughout Jewish history, but especially in the wake of Lurianic Kabbalah in the 17th century, we have an active decoupling of music from text for either mystical or for aesthetic purposes, thus paving the way for the nigun as cultivated by the Hasidim many decades later. Really, the nigun in some ways is just a domestication of what these Polish and Western Ashkenazi Chazanim were doing just 50 years before, in my opinion. Another of the two behaviors that Polish cantors are known for is for being loud and for putting their hand on their face like this. This latter practice of putting the hand on the face is actually something that Edward Birnbaum, the great musicologist, first observed. You can see this lovely looking gentleman in the middle of this book from Poland, Opusculum Musicae Mensuralis. It's the first Polish music treatise in 1517. But so this may have been picked up from Christian singers, but it also may simply be a factor of space. We have entered in the 16th and the 17th century, certainly, the era of the Great Synagogue. Large buildings, now not made of wood, but made of stone masonry, like the old synagogue here in Krakow, where they're using big and largely vernacular styles of Italian architecture. And when, as you can see, you got a different, and it's supposed to, I know this is I can't pronounce it very well. This is an older synagogue in Poland on the right, and this is the new, big domed, arch, filled masonry synagogue on the left, number A, letter A. You have a change of acoustics, often requires a change in volume and in vocal production. The volume of Polish cantors eventually becomes known actually all over Europe, both locally and in the West. Rabbi Yom Tov Lippmann Heller comments, quote, "It is customary throughout these lands for piyutim that people raise their voices and cry aloud until the nations mock us on account of this. This may be because the aforementioned aforementioned issues in changes in architecture, or the simple unleashing of creativity in music, or as a result of freezing the Siddur. But I think it comes from two other interesting factors as well. Those of you who are with me in Berlin have seen this little fun thing before. One of the biggest factors in Poland and Bohemia was the printing press, which in my opinion appears to have had a similar impact on Christians as Jews. In the medieval age of the manuscript, people with the books were the clergy, the priests, right? And in prayer, there was a distinct division of labor. Thus, in Catholicism, the monks and the priests painstakingly wrote out the books and used them to teach the Bible and sing the prayers. And the congregation listened and dutifully did their part. But now, everyone can have a book, and the world starts for a moment to appear as if everyone is a miniature version of a priest. You can tell that this is going to mean a lot of changes, social, theological, and musical. Now, I would argue, which of course makes the people in charge a little bit angry, I would argue that the same thing happens in Judaism in the age of print, because this is exactly what is reported here in 1620 in Sefer Lev Tov in Prague. Quote, it says, "In the past there were not so many machzorim before printing came along. There were not more than 2 or 3 machzorim in the whole synagogue, written on parchment, and no one spoke from them other than the Chazan. And in the past they had Chazanim who were heads of yeshivas, who understood well what they said, and the others listened to the cantor as he spoke, so that no one who did not understand said anything. But now some have a large machzor in front of them and shout louder than the Chazan, and speak and do not know what they are saying, like a bird that cries or a hound woof that barks and does not know what it is shouting. It is a wondrous thing that our beautiful, lovely prayers are brought with ignorance and lack of understanding, and that we have to shout and are unable to listen to a word the Chazan says. Would it not be better that we should keep quiet and listen to the Chazan? Because generally, every Chazan understands what he says, and when we listen to the Chazan word for word, then we shall fulfill our obligation. So what we are seeing here is a total subversion of the prayer service hierarchy. Printed prayer books were among the first mass-produced books for the Jewish population in the late 16th and early 17th centuries in Poland, Lithuania, egged on by their mystically driven rabbinic elites. But this had an unintended effect. Just like the printed Bible made every Christian look like a priest, the printed prayer book made every individual worshiper look like a chazan. Why? Now they are their own copy of what used to be only the Chazan's personal materials. It's been democratized, and that material is the Siddur. As Sefer Lev Tov demonstrates, this causes a sonic boom. This causes a gigantic cacophony, and which probably caused cantors to become much louder themselves, creating the sacred cacophony, I believe, that we know as davening. So the increase in sound in Poland and Lithuania, because everyone thinks they're a chazan and they're being really loud. So the chazan has to be very different and perhaps much louder to actually be heard in this environment. But there's another factor at play. This is also an era where from the mid-16th to mid-17th centuries, Jews have a stable relationship with their host societies in Poland and Lithuania for the most part. It's how they're actually able to grow. What I like to say about the early modern period is there was a lot of Jewish growth because it was an era where we weren't being schmeisted every 20 years. We could actually, have communal growth. Well, the following statement is from a Polish-born cantor who worked largely in northern Bohemia in Czechalipa, I think in 1724. I think it also reflects a truth that could be applied to the Polish-Lithuanian situation. And if those who are reading the Hebrew will appreciate his rhyme, I tried to rhyme it myself when I translated it. When Mark was working with me on my master's thesis, he'll recognize this a little bit. The nations forbid us to pray with a wail, but as for we, B'kol Tza'aka, they say. But as for us, we, thank God, have a king of love and mercy. May God lengthen his days and years with pleasantry, him, his wife, and his seed, till generations end, for he has always been good to us. So we have permission to pray as our souls move us loudly and with music too, and no one complains or gives reproof. Even the princes and governors under whom we dwell, may God lengthen their days and years, treat us well. What's the point of this? Rabbi Yoel Chazan, is bringing together salutary political conditions and good secular authorities as the basis by which Ashkenazic Jews can be loud. As opposed, or at least he's in East Central, he's a Polish Jew, as opposed to his Sephardic or Ottoman Jews who he perceived as being quiet because they lived under oppression. And I think it's pretty fair to say that this situation, though occurring earlier between the mid-16th and mid-17th centuries, describes the conditions of Jews in their golden age in Poland. Remember, they interpreted the name of Poland as Polin, we will dwell here. So because of this political stability, or indeed because of changes in architecture, mysticism, co-territorial musical exchange, and print culture, the Polish Ashkenazic sound became iconically loud. Another important innovation in this era, which I argue developed in Bohemia and then spread to Polish cantors, but that's for another talk, was the Mishorerim. These were small groups of Ashkenazic liturgical singers that joined the cantor for special moments of singing, at minimum a bas, a low-voiced singer, and a zinger or tiskant, a boy who's high-voiced, and possibly a tenor as well. You can see them circled in green. These Mishorerim were not like the choirs that have been at your beautiful concerts. They were predominantly just alternating singing with the cantor, giving him rest. And if Daniel Katz is there, you can ask him more. He's analyzed this wonderfully in his academic work. Most of the manuscripts of these singers that we have point to them singing in a Western Baroque-inflected style, and more often providing instrumental textures, seemingly imitating bassoons and flutes and the like. Now, as this phenomenon spread, rabbis got very angry at the excesses of these new synagogue singers who were known for, among other things, getting drunk, being impious, messing up the prayers, and doing silly things on the bima. Fortunately, no choirs have ever been accused of such behavior since that time. Often communities deal with discomfort through humor. And we can see this with the Mishorerim because they show up in one of the first ever Yiddish Purim spiels that we have, the Achashverosh spiel, published by a Christian Hebraist and given to him by a Polish Jew in 1697. So I can't see many people. Raise your hand if you've played Haman in your community at a Purim spiel.
Two people.
Anybody? Two people?
Now we understand.
Now you know, right? I always in my Abe Lubin, if you met him before, Abe Lubin always played Haman, and I succeeded him in Bethesda playing Haman. So I have a lot of time playing Haman, and I feel very at home because this is the Haman is the first role, the cantorial role in the history of Yiddish Purim spiels. It says, "Ostragi, ostragi, ale Yuda by bagi." Carry out the furniture, because that's what the set is for them. All Jews listen in. All Jews make an alley. All give Haman space. I am called Lord Haman the Best. I am well versed in knavery and childish pranks. Schreiber, mir wollen singen Tisken, Tenor und Bass. Scribe, we will sing Deskens, tenor, and bass. The parlor shall ring as if from ein Hohlfass, from an empty barrel. And then, lo and behold, it says, the Beshorim come, wir treten herein, go hübsch und go fein, wir werden bei den edlen König und Königin Diener sein. Like, we want to come and sing for the king and queen and serve them, and then they all sing together. So again, this is just to show you that of the tension which is between this new Meshurim, this new Polish style, and the local communities, and they're working it out via Purim Spiel, which is a usual remissive release in Jewish culture. But now we've come to the pivot in our history. The 17th century saw gradually increased migration of Polish Jews into West German lands, first in search of economic opportunity, and then in great need following the Kielniki massacres of 1648. Thus, masses of Polish immigrants began to flood westward, massively alternating the character of German synagogue life. The comical pamphlet Beschreibung von Ashkenaz und Polak, written around 1675, joked that whenever German Jews wanted a great rabbi or cantor, they would send for one from Poland. But this was perhaps by popular demand, because some areas, as we'll review today, like Hamburg, Amsterdam, and Worms, gradually saw significant change and controversy because of this Polish invasion. Let's have a look. Here we are in Worms. The cradle of Ashkenaz. It's not far from you guys. A large Jewish community with a stable and continuous history from the Middle Ages into this early modern period, despite traumas and challenges. Host to generations of key figures in the development of the German Ashkenazic liturgical custom, the Rokeach, mayor of Rothenburg, and the Maharil himself. The long-held religious customs, the Minhagim of Worms, were set down in two compendia by Rav Yudah Leib Kirchheim and Rabbi Yusva Shamash, reflecting the importance of these rituals and the sacrality of the Worms community itself. It is in the context of this codification of local custom that the influx of Polish Jews and refugees and cantors became particularly disruptive. We're going to see the Chovos Yair, right? By Yair Chaim Bachrach worked in this community. He actually grew up in this community and worked there at the end of the 17th century. Writing in his commentary on Yusva Shamash's book of Minhagim, he quotes the aforementioned Rabbi Heller from Poland to describe the transmission of what he terms as an international cantorial disease. Quote, "It is written in Lechem Chamudot, the cantors of these lands raise their voices, lay their hands on their cheek, and this is worthless. But don't do it at the moment of song. It is certain that one should remove them. But if they sing and make their voices pleasant, so that they should no longer require this, it's better. Firstly, they should not rest their hand on their jaw. Second, that they should not appear unseemly when they open their mouth and move their heads. And I have seen," he continues, "I have seen this horrible thing also among the cantors in the lands of Ashkenaz, and it is an epidemic which has made its way there from the land of Poland, where they read in a loud voice," main reading Torah, "and they sing with a loud and bitter cry. And because of their need for great strength and an outstretched arm to do this, they hurl their heads about their bodies, making confounding movements with their heads, and they corrupt the words, they obliterate the letters, they confuse the tenuot, the motions, via the motions of this confounding melody, and they call out dan 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 la 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 and the like. One who hears them and sees them will laugh at them, and by virtue of such things we are an object of scorn, derision, and scandal to our enemies." End quote. Indeed, Rabbi Bachrach appeared to have even been ambivalent about revealing the full extent of cultural displacement occurring before his eyes. His predecessor, Rabbi Yosef Shamash, wrote of a custom in Worms to sing the opening of the Ma'ariv service following a festival using the melody for the Benigun Motzei Shabbat, whatever the melody was for Motzei Shabbat that was special. So do that for Shabbos and festivals too. Yet Rabbi Bacharach's manuscript contains a stricken out addition to this comment, Shel Polin. So the Chofetz Yair originally records that this service actually was using a Polish melody, but on second thought, we're going to erase this from my manuscript. This action unveils another instance in which the Polish influence in Worms began to transform the Ashkenazic minhag, possibly past the point Rabbi Bachrach wished to openly acknowledge. All right, Hamburg. We have some hamburgers there, yes?
Matt, can I
That's,
ask,
lunch is coming, so there must be some hamburgers.
Matt, can I ask you something?
Yes,
Nice to see you first.
nice to see you.
Is it possible that Shel Polin is referred to the minhag to do the melody in Motzei Shabbat in the beginning and not the melody itself from Polin, because they were very conservative in terms of melodies. We know it from
They
Mahari,
were.
right?
Oh yes, I'm saying the conservatism about melodies is being subverted. This I can double check the footnote for this, which is in the I think it's a rough Mossad what I forget the publication of the Shamash manuscript. But I believe in this context he is adding an annotation that it is of Poland and that he is crossing it out. So I think it's not for the entire service. It's just for the
So you think
specific
it's
nigun.
referred to the melody?
I think it refers to the melody, yes.
Well,
But I will be, but Isidora, I will make you happy in one way. There's one city where really this change doesn't occur a lot, and that is Frankfurt, which I know you have studied well. And the reason is that the Frankfurters are like the Polish with immigration. They don't let anyone in. So all these Polish people come to Frankfurt and they say, "Hi, thank you for staying here. You're going to be going to another community now."
Thank
So
you, Matt.
that's why Frankfurt is a little more. You can't say pure, but a little less affected by Polish immigration. But please, if you have a question about any of this stuff that I can't elaborate on before lunch, please write me. On to Hamburg. This is, of course, the home of Glico von Hameln, right, who had a very acculturated upbringing in the mid to late 17th century. And yet, Polish Jews began to arrive in the mid-century both as beggars and especially as chazanim and other in-demand Jewish professionals. It is here that one pious and conservative Polish Jew, Rabbi Yehuda Leib Zelichover, a page of his wonderful Shirei Yehuda is here, reveals that cantors were involved in some grave musical offenses. They are adding their own melodies, which is making a pig's breakfast of the halakha and kabbanic edifice of prayer. It is a total mess. He says, quote, "Behold, my brothers and fellows, according to these words, we hear of the great benefit of our prayers from those old ancient melodies, that is, the ones which awaken the hearts of humanity and cancel all the gezerot, the evil decrees with God's help, and tear up a person's divine judgment. But now, in this generation, on account of our ba'avonotenu harabim, on account of our many sins, innovators have come, going about in darkness without knowledge or understanding, and abandon the old melodies and cast them behind their backs and make fun of them, saying, 'This is an old thing, and we are not satisfied with it.' And they choose other melodies in their place, either of their devising or taken from their theaters, and they bring them to the Lord's temple, and they are like those melodies that accompany mixed dancing. And there are those of them that study melodies from the uncircumcised, those who go door to door in search of food, and sing them in our house of worship. Has an evil thing like this, or appearing like it, ever been heard of? Should the Lord desire such songs as these?" End quote.
Matt, I also wanted to ask something. It's all written in the plural form. All those claims about the terrible chazanim who destroy everything. Is there like
Yes.
a face, one notoriously hated chazan who is to blame for everything?
He's the next slide.
Okay.
If you want to see a picture of one, I'll show you a picture of one.
I'd love to. Might be my
You'll
greatest
see.
problem.
Yes, you might. You'll see him on the next slide.
Good.
These musical cantors coming westward are not like the pious ones that Yehuda grew up with in Zelichov, the little town, right? They are picking up melodies from all sorts of places, including from the theaters, by the way, likely from Hamburg's first public opera house, which opens in 1671 and which Jews attended, from dances, and really from Kurende, right? From Kurende, from students and beggars singing door to door in the street for money. Cantors are saying, "Hey, here's a kopek," right? It's not a kopek, but something like that, and say, yeah, here's some marks, teach me some music. The impact here also of the tavern is very significant, and was a very surprising thing from my research. That as is Zelichover's entire book, by the way, Shirei Yehuda, is really structured around. He wrote two songs, which are pious alternatives to the secular tunes that were used at festive meals. Remember, Ashkenazic Jews in Hamburg couldn't actually own property; they boarded, celebrated, and lived on a temporary basis in taverns. And cantors were on the front lines of being those musical entertainment for Jews in those spaces. Yechiel Epstein's Kitzur Shulchan Aruch from 1696 similarly and stunningly laments the musical devolution of such affairs. Quote, "One should remove those cantors who sing at festive meals, singing Kaddish or other holy prayers, for surely this is a great sin which the sages did not permit, making a laughter and mockery of Torah verses and holy words. And furthermore, woe to the eyes that see and woe to the ears that hear what is customary at wedding meals, to sing songs called Hurenlieder, whore songs, and lascivious talk at the request of the masses, and the ladies and the young women sing too. And if one cannot stop it, he should leave, so that his ears do not hear, and also so that he should not be scorned and derided among them." Indeed, it is these same things that Zelichover and Epstein are lamenting: mixed gender singing, erotic song, dance tunes, and liturgical melodies sung out of synagogue or church that are the hallmarks of tavern musical repertoire in the 17th century. Thus, in Hamburg and beyond, my contention is that cantors are working a lot in taverns and are bringing the transgressive and boundary-pushing social structures and musical structures from the tavern into the synagogue with wild results. But now the moment that Asaph has been waiting for. Asaph's favorite face, the face of transgression. Meet this man, Yechiel Michal ben Natan, a Chazan from Lublin in Western Poland. He says Merusia, and if you can see on the bottom. You can see this name in this Dutch etching by Pieter van der Berg. Yechiel became one of the cantors of the Great Synagogue in Amsterdam in 1700, and is credited as having introduced the bas and zinger Mishorim for the first time. In fact, some people believe that those are them in the background there. And this created a gigantic controversy, which came to a head during the short-lived tenure of Rab Aryeh Leib Kalish, who's pictured right here in the middle. He became chief rabbi in 1708, and just 1 year later, this was reported in Yaakov Emden's autobiographical Megillat Sefer. Quote, "At that time, the community was torn by fierce dissension caused by the notorious incident of the two Chazanim. Many lives have been ruined and much money lost over this quarrel of several years. Indeed, the situation had reached such an impasse that on Shabbat Shuvah in 1709, the two factions who contended as to which of the two aforementioned Chazanim should officiate in the great synagogue came to physical blows. They threw or pushed lecterns at one another, and it seemed they intended to cause fatal injury to each other. For our many sins, this synagogue, a Mikdash Me'at, became a den of terrorists. But because of the great trepidation and terror that affected the aforementioned rabbi on that particular occasion, he became seriously ill, and returning to his house, he never recovered, for he was struck by a fatal illness." You think synagogue politics is bad today? Now, a little more about this incident. This is where we get the West versus East thing going on. We know that the second cantor involved in this Montague Capulet cantor war was Aryeh Leib ben Zev Wolf, the cantor of the second Ashkenazi synagogue. His father was from Hamelberg. Anyone from Hamelberg?
Used to be.
This is the only crowd I can make. Anybody from Hamelberg out there? He was from Hamelberg in Bavaria, and his father served as cantor in the community and in that great synagogue for 40 years. So this looks like a fight between a traditional Deutschmer German cantorial family and an upstart Polish musical innovator with his Mishorim, which leads to blows and the new rabbi dying of stress-related illness during the Atzeret Yemei Tshuva. Following the rabbi's death, the community leaders banned that base from the synagogue, and Chazan Yechiel left the community just 3 years later. But the situation in Amsterdam isn't only disturbing among the increasingly Polish population of Ashkenazim, it is incredibly frustrating to the Sephardic community of Amsterdam, who see Polish innovations of their neighbors as a blight upon the good name of Bon Judaismo. This is an anonymous Hebrew broadsheet, more than likely published in Amsterdam. At least I checked the watermark. It's an Amsterdam paper, Dutch paper, at the turn of the century. It is entitled Shloshat Zoakin Ve'inan Na'anin. Three scream, and no one answers them. The author isn't ready to face the public. He writes at the end that he has withheld his name Mipnei ha'amon am sheruach shtut v'shigaon aleiham avav, because of the masses who have the spirit of wild madness come upon them. So the author directly implicates both German and Polish cantors. He describes their multiplying of new melodies, their ridiculous personal comportment during prayer that we recognize. They hold their ears. They grab their genitals, nebuch. They bend over backwards and fling themselves around while they are praying, all to hear their own voices. And then he lays into the bass singer and the mishorim. It says here, actually, you can read it if you another time. It says, "V'hasheni omed limino d'sitno b'madrigal misilat." It says a second stands on the as a Satan on the right to accuse him each step of the way. Hu ha'ish asher lakach lo lebas. This is a joke you cannot get unless you understand Ashkenazi Hebrew, right? Bas, daughter, bas, base. Same word. They got the joke back then very quickly. He screams as one treading on wine, and his voice is heavy and huge, end quote. And the text goes on saying that these Meshurim, they're ignorant in Torah reading and prayer. They extend one syllable to be long and another to be short until you can't understand what is being said. They don't go to shul. They have no kavanah. Complete deplorables. And it's not only a critique of this time. We have another Purim poem also in Amsterdam by Abraham da Costa Abendana, contemporaneous with this first decade, and then it appears again in London, but copied down from memory by his cousin, his relative Solomon da Costa Atias, demonstrating that the Polish style and its Sephardic backlash had made it to that sceptered isle by the early 18th century. And by the way, there's this sort of interesting thing. As we have Aish Kaklu Labas, here we have Umamid Bitzido Ezer Kedigdo. We have this sort of mild eroticism going on between the cantor and his Mishorim that is being indicated polemically by these writers. And so, but this critique does not stop there. It actually migrates, and we just found the manuscript of that Shoshat Zoakin during the last couple of years. It migrates from Amsterdam, eventually makes its way and is reprinted in expanded edition in Prague, which makes that Yoel Circus we saw earlier really, really angry. And it's my contention that this is actually the version that he writes his response. And by the way, also in 1750 in Fürth, an entire cantorial apologetic commentary on this is again written in its manuscript in the Bodleian Library. So this critique spreads, and also Chazanim, as they grow together as a profession, are starting to respond to these critiques. Now, as we've come to the mid-18th century and the conclusion of my talk, we've seen that the Polish cantorial wave has completely transformed most of Western Ashkenaz, except for Frankfurt, Isidore, as I said. But for most other major cities, the Polish ethos, mishorim, loudness, wild gestures, grabbing your face, and musical experimentation was the new paradigm. Polish custom would take root and transform elements of even the oldest Western Ashkenazic custom, as in Worms. What we appreciate today as Western Ashkenaz or German tradition, however this it may be, is also heavily contingent on this era of Polish influence. Our Ashkenazic minhagim, even our most local customs, are not inviolate pure things, but they are the co-created products of our global Jewish family. And so I want to thank you for joining me. I'll take questions now. If you're interested in things like this, I write about them weekly on austerklein.substack.com. I've been writing Jewish music columns there for about 2.5 years now. And I thank you so much, and I'll welcome questions. Hello, hi, Yalda.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Matt. Great to see you and great to hear
Thank you.
your wonderful talk.
Thank you.
I wish you would be here, but that's another story. Talking about the hand on the cheek. Isn't it more to have the hand on the ear to hear yourself as a technique of listening better to each other?
I think so. I need to work with Christian scholars on this because this seems to be like analyzing water to fish with the people I've talked to. But I think this is because in a bigger environment, like in a larger cathedral style environment, like you would find in an Italian Baroque construction, you need to hear yourself better. So I think it's
Yeah.
more the ear, holding the ears, that's the
Yeah.
issue, rather than, and so just like people do, like, oh, I'm warming up, I want to hear myself,
Yeah, yeah.
today.
Yeah. Hi,
Hello.
Matthew. How you doing? Good to see
Well, thank good to
you.
see good to see you, Leah.
My conjecture with the hand on the cheek would more be to guide the movement of the jaw and kind of feel that they didn't know that then, but there are acupressure points here. And maybe if I notice some of them have their hands here, this is a very powerful thing that helps you the lower breathing muscles.
It's very possible that they didn't know that,
They
but
didn't know
but
that,
they
but
but
I
they
mean,
did, but they did it anyway.
singers always are doing this also, so and they don't know why. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, but
There's
Baruch
there's
Hashem,
one
Bach and Bach is
interesting
over.
yes. There's an additional bit of vocal technique which I actually have not really been able to study with another contemporaneous Christian scholar, which is when say they put the gudal betoch hakana. There's some laryngeal manipulation that
You
is
can,
pointed
yeah.
out with the throat. And there are various claims that go back and forth. The cantorial defense of this is that it actually makes you less loud. It's like a
You
muting
have-
technique. I have no idea what this putting your thumb in your throat or on your throat is. This is a history,
It is.
an interesting vocal technique history question. But he says "Lamati mechokmei ha'omot," from the wisdom of the nations. Right? He learned it from the goyim
Yeah.
how to do this.
You
So
might want
I
to
don't really know
contact-
enough about that. It's
You
interesting.
might want to ask if you know Ingo Tietze, who's part of the National Association of Teachers of Singing. You might want to contact him.
Oh, very
I'll
good.
see what I can find out here. Okay?
Danke. I'll send you the source. Send me an email.
A question from Professor Fenton.
Thank you very much for a very informative talk. Might I suggest that you also look over the other side of the Mediterranean, any picture about a muezzin, when he's calling to prayer, he always has his hand to his ear. And this for two reasons. One, to listen to himself like a tuning fork to get the right note, and also to heighten his voice. Okay, you miss something in the broadsheet where it says about lokech lo labas. In the following sentences, it has soakim gedorche hagas in Ashkenazi Yiddish.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
people who are vagrants in the street.
Yeah. Oh, Hagas. Thank you for that. I didn't get that Ashkenazic bit. Oh,
You
that's
missed it.
great. Dorche
And the
Hagas.
last remark is
Thank
that
you.
in Kohelet Shlomo by Shlomo Geiger, who's a very strong conservative, there's also a number of passages, although this is outside your time range, he's in 19th century, but he takes a whack of all the Polish customs that have been introduced in the Frankfurt ritual and has a very humorous page on Simchat Torah, where people are dancing, which was unheard of in the Frankfurt ritus.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I was thinking to myself, I remember reading that in my research. I forgot who the source was, but it is Geiger. It is Geiger. Thank you so much, Professor.
Last comment / question from Alex Klein.
Hi, Alex.
Hi,
Good to see you.
Matt. Very interesting. We have the same problem in the UK when the Yiddish theatre guys came over from Poland and they went to the taverns and they had to make a living. And Chief Rabbi Adler at the time threw them out and they ended up in Paris. Then you got them in New York, but that's another situation.
True.
How long did it take this balagan of controversy to sort itself out towards what we have or resemble something like we have today? As I don't mean in the conservative, but I mean in the mainstream. synagogue services.
So
So
I
what
think
happened
that
to the
these
Balagan
I think the Balagans seem to, in my estimation, Alex, evolve over periods of 1 century. So for the you said the from 1640 to 1740 is really the sort of first migration, at first the growth of the Polish model, and then its recombination in the West, and that you get one version of things. And then 1740 to 1840 is really the era of really music literacy, where Chazanim are reading sheet music and writing their own manuscripts, and that takes us up to the era of Zulza. So I think really Chazonis, as we start to know it, really happens is a function of the 18th century, because you get especially I think that Chazanis really develops in the same time period that Yiddish develops, right? The same way that Eastern Yiddish, Polish Yiddish, really distinguishes itself, and starting in the mid 18th century and on, I think that's when Chazanis really gets its own real flavor. So that by the time you get to the turn of the 19th century, the styles are so and really have their own geist that we would see today, or more like what we see today.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Danke sehr. Have a good meal. Have a good lunch. Thank you for zooming me in. I appreciate
This
it.
has been great, just as we suspected it would be. Thank you so much for your time. Next year, I hope
My pleasure.
to see you in person. You should plan better, you know.
I know.
You
I know.
plan better your times in Germany. So we would love
I'll
to
be
have
back in April, I think. I think my Verteidigung will be when the new
Right.
term
Oh,
going. So I'll
that's
keep
the
you posted.
That's
All
the
the
high.
best.
I'm sure you'll do great. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Dankeschön.
Okay.
Tschüss.
Me.